A friend of mine forwarded me an email received from MoveOn.org. This friend is on their email list because, know thy enemy and what they're doing. This is a fundraising email where they're asking members to send them money to help them try to force Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to recuse himself from Trump's presidential immunity case that's coming before the court. The Olympic level stretching that they do in this email is incredible. We're talking a gold medal for stretching the truth by lying in nearly every paragraph. You're not going to believe the twisted logic coming from these radical leftist lunatics. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back. So MoveOn is grifting to purchase the entire front page of the Washington Post to try to force Clarence Thomas to recuse himself. And oddly enough, they don't get to the real reason they have to do this until near the end of the email. The email starts off, "Dear MoveOn member, MoveOn has raised almost enough to launch our ambitious plan to take over the front page of the Washington Post with hard-hitting ads calling on Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to recuse himself from a case that could determine whether Donald Trump may be criminally prosecuted for his crimes." This takeover is critical and very timely because on April 25, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in one of the most consequential cases in American history. The court will decide whether Trump, who is facing dozens of felony charges, is immune from criminal prosecution. And Thomas has a clear conflict of interest in this case. But they don't get to that till later. To take over all of the ads on the front page of the Washington Post and call on Thomas to recuse himself, MoveOn needs to raise $25,000 by this Friday, just 72 hours away, with oral arguments in the Trump case set to begin at the Supreme Court on April 25. Time is running out, people. Will you rush a $9 donation right now to call on Thomas to recuse himself from deciding whether Trump can be criminally prosecuted? So they have already made the case to grift $9 donations from you before they ever get to the reason why they want your damn money. And trust me, guys, if you ever send groups like this a donation, they will never stop asking you for more. They are worse than politicians. Now we get into the real nitty gritty that makes up their fantasy land based on Trump hatred. It goes on. As special counsel Jack Smith argues in his papers before the Supreme Court, quote, "A bedrock principle of our constitutional order is that no person is above the law, including the president." But you see, I believe that the Supreme Court will rule that no person is below the law either. And MoveOn has always treated Trump as if he's below the law because they support the communists with prosecutorial powers and those who wear black robes. It goes on. If the Supreme Court rules the wrong way, it'll become an important legal precedent. That right there is ignorant and insulting. MoveOn is determining what is the right and wrong way to rule in this case before the court even hears it. In other words, they are so convinced that a president should not have immunity from prosecution, even though that would lead to the opposition party threatening a sitting president with prosecutions if he doesn't govern the way they want him to. These people would MoveOn act like emotionally stunted teenagers where they want what they want and they know that they're right. And if you disagree with them, shut up, bigot. It continues. That means other courts will make decisions in cases with similar issues based on how the Supreme Court has ruled. Yeah, they should. Precedents can last decades or even hundreds of years. We can only hope. And what will happen if the Supreme Court issues a decision declaring Trump is immune from prosecution? Our country will be at risk of future dictators, authoritarians, and strongman presidents. I think Trump should sue these a-holes for saying something like that in an email. They're referring to Trump as a dictator, an authoritarian, and a strongman when he was president. Trump showed absolutely no signs of any one of those things when he was president. Trump didn't lock anyone down during COVID. Trump did not prosecute his political opponents like all dictators do. Trump did not charge people with misdemeanor crimes where the statute of limitations ran out half a decade prior just to take up time during a campaign season to interfere in an election. Trump did not create mandates to make people take experimental medicine. You want to compare notes between Trump and real dictators? Bring it on, bitches. Joe Biden is the epitome of a fascist dictator who is a sociopathic narcissist who knows he's going to lose in November. And so he's doing everything he can to interfere in the 2024 election for Trump, including getting state and local prosecutors involved. It goes on. We already know that Trump has fascist tendencies. He will be further emboldened if the Supreme Court rules that he was above the law while in office. Leftards like whoever wrote this email use performative truth theory, where they don't have to provide any evidence, empirical or not, because just by them making the declarative statement, that's what makes it true. Their statement is the truth. The problem is that there are more sane people than these insane ass clowns writing this email, and they're seeing right through it. They write, what could a Supreme Court decision in Trump's favor bring? The ignorance of these people is astounding, guys. The Supreme Court wouldn't be ruling a decision in favor of Donald Trump. These mental midgets have no clue that the case is not particularly about Trump, but about the office of the president. Again, if a president has to worry about every time he makes a move being scrutinized by people who would have the right to then charge him with crimes that have nothing to do with the actions taken lawfully as president, in how the Democrats are doing that right now to Donald Trump, it would lock down the executive branch and make it powerless. This email in itself is as un-American as it gets. These people have no clue what it means to be an American. They have tunnel vision. Get Trump, get Trump, get Trump. That's all they have on their brain. Then they go on to add Hitler and Mussolini comparisons, of course, because you have to. But did you notice that they still have not gotten to why Clarence Thomas should recuse himself? This is what the insane lefties do. They throw out a lot of BS at you. They spread the hyperbolic statements on thick and get you riled up, to frighten you, and all to make you hate Donald Trump. And then towards the end is when they give the actual reason, hoping that all that hyperbolic nonsense that they threw at you is enough to keep you angry so that you don't read the reason they give you, roll your eyes, and hit the delete button on your keyboard. Here you go. Where do you hear this? We've got to stop Trump's fascist takeover of American institutions. We must do everything possible to prevent a Supreme Court ruling that Trump is above the law. Will you pitch in $9 right now to help MoveOn raise the additional $25,000 needed to blah, 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 blah? I mean, my God, they made 2 pitches already. They make the second pitch for your $9 to help them reach 25 grand to take over the front page. They want to take over the front page so they can tell you how much they need Thomas to recuse himself from hearing Trump's case. But they don't seem to realize Clarence Thomas handles the cases from D.C. There's no way he's going to recuse himself because he's done nothing wrong. So now, finally, they get why Clarence Thomas needs to recuse himself. Wait till you hear this. They say, let's be absolutely clear. Thomas is unfit to rule in this case. He has an obvious conflict of interest because his wife, Ginny Thomas, actively participated in the effort to overturn the 2020 election, as it is specifically Trump's charges related to election interference that are at the center of the Supreme Court case. Well, there are so many things to unpack in this little stupid paragraph. First off, Clarence Thomas is not unfit to rule in this case, because they admit right there by omission in their reason in the paragraph that the justice has done nothing wrong. Then they go on to say that Justice Thomas has a conflict of interest because his wife Ginny is a conservative activist. I remember for decades, the feminists told us that women had a mind of their own, that women could do anything men can do, and that they don't need a man to help them make decisions, including political ones. So now all of a sudden, Ginny Thomas is a woman who is politically active, leaning conservative, and these nimrods are claiming that she couldn't possibly have come up with her own conservative beliefs. Her conservative beliefs without her husband being involved. How insulting. So what they are accusing Clarence Thomas of doing for the reason he should recuse himself is being married to Ginny. And then they go on to say that Ginny Thomas was involved in things related to election interference that are at the center of the Supreme Court case. Then why wasn't she indicted? Ginny Thomas was involved in activism to do the same damn thing Donald Trump was trying to do. Come on, guys. It's true. Ginny Thomas, like Trump, was fighting for election integrity. MoveOn, by the very nature of this email, is involved in election interference. Charges brought against Donald Trump is election interference, pure and simple. The DOJ chose Jack Smith because they know that he is a crooked prosecutor who was overturned 9-0 by the Supreme Court because he did so many unconstitutional and unethical things. And Jack Smith has a personal grudge against Trump. He should be the one to recuse himself. Jack Smith was an assistant U.S. attorney in New Orleans. The U.S. attorney, his boss, was retiring. Normally, what happens is the senior assistant U.S. attorney is then considered to replace the U.S. attorney. The president at that time chose not to select Jack Smith because the president knew that Jack Smith was a crooked prosecutor. So the president went with someone else. The president at that time was Donald Trump. Jack Smith then resigned in protest and went to do some things at The Hague. So Jack Smith has a serious grudge against Trump, and he should have recused himself because of it. How come MoveOn doesn't tell Jack Smith to recuse himself when he has a serious conflict of interest with the man he's prosecuting? Because they are all left-wing radical lunatics who do not believe in due process, who do not believe in the rule of law, while they preach gospel that they do. And the last paragraph I'm going to read from this idiotic email is this. If Thomas and the Trump-packed Supreme Court declare that Trump is immune from criminal prosecution, it would effectively insulate Ginny Thomas from scrutiny about her role in Trump's election interference efforts. If the Supreme Court declares that Trump is immune from criminal prosecution for something that he didn't do, they will have protected the office of the president from creeps like MoveOn.org who pressure communists in the Democratic Party to go after presidents who never called for violence, who asked people to march peacefully and patriotically, and who had no intentions of committing an insurrection. So the big question is, what do they expect to gain from a full-page ad at the WAPA, where truth dies in the darkness with every paragraph, about forcing Thomas to recuse himself? Are they hoping that this draws riots outside the Supreme Court building to threaten the other justices? Are they putting Justice Thomas in harm's way? Because this email sounds more like a dog whistle for violence than a grift for $9. So there you have it. MoveOn is as radical as it gets. They're calling for the recusal of Justice Clarence Thomas from hearing the case about presidential immunity because his wife was involved in trying to bring election integrity to the most garbage election of our nation's history. The 2020 election had a plethora of problems where communist judges refused to hear cases brought to them, claiming there was no standing. Trump was running for president, and there were mountains of election fraud witnessed by people who wanted to testify. And the judges said that he, Trump, had no standing. So if you ever get a solicitation from this group of ignoramuses, just throw it in the trash bin, because that's all it's worth. If you get something on paper from MoveOn.org in the mail, my best advice for you is that it makes wonderful liner at the bottom of a dirty bird cage. All right, guys, smash that like button if you think MoveOn.org is a bunch of delusional, hypocritical grifters. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please share our videos with like-minded friends who want to stay informed with what's really going on. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next one.
Laughed at the mall 'cause your mama forgot. I know it hurt.